Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Gunner Shot में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we are going to talk of something very interesting. And what are we going to talk of? We're going to talk of India needs to learn from Cholas. We're going to revisit our roots because what the Cholas did and what the Cholas faced is something like what we are facing today. And for this interaction, and it's an interesting interaction, I have with me Colonel Dpk Pillay. First, let me welcome him.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening, Colonel Pillay. Welcome to Gunner Shot. This is the first time. It's an honor for me that you are here.
Thank you, sir.
And let me explain to everyone who Colonel Pillay is. Let me introduce you to him. First and foremost, he's a veteran. That's natural. The second thing is he's a highly decorated officer. Not everyone in the Indian Army gets a Shaurya Chakra. And plus, he is a soldier scholar. He writes extensively. He's writing a book. He delves into history. He delves into sociology, societal aspects of India. And I've read a couple of his articles, and I was very impressed with the approach he took, which is absolutely positive towards India. And that too without being jingoistic. It's all down to earth. Now, after retirement, he's held many important assignments, including in the National Security Secretariat. And these days, he's with one of the leading think tanks in India, the MPIDSA, that is Manohar Parrikar, right? Institute of Study and Defense Analysis. Uh, and he wrote a couple of articles recently which I thought were outstanding. And that is why I thought I'll get him to speak to all of you. And this one, which he wrote about Cholas, and in this article, he's described how the Cholas faced multiple friends, overcame them, and established an empire for 3 centuries. Right? And it's a marvel. And I mean, if I know my history right, the Chola Empire went right up to Cambodia, the Khmer Peninsula. And I've been to Angkor Wat, one of the biggest, in fact, it's not one of the biggest temple, it is the biggest temple, Hindu temple in the world. And that was built in the Chola era. How is it that our predecessors, our ancestors, had such a huge empire in those days where there were no communications, no nothing, no internet, no zero, right? And they could control trade from here up to the Western Pacific. And today we are struggling just to control our neighborhood. There must be something wrong. And to explain what was right then and what's wrong now and how do we get back, I'll request Colonel Pillay. Pillay, all yours, take off.
I know, sir. We, for some reasons, we've been actually conditioned to believe that we are a very non-aggressive, non-invasionist, pacific race, which is not the case. We actually, if you look at the history of the world, we are probably the only country or the only civilization that has been continuously existing since long, from times immemorial. Like it's very clear that India and its Sanskrit and Tamil literature amongst the oldest spoken languages in the world, and it also is amongst the oldest literatures that we have is Indian. And it's interesting that if you study all that has happened and been coming through our ages, whether it's our epics called the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, these are all military epics. These are all epics which tells us about stories about leadership, military accomplishments, and others. But for some reason, we've been in the last 70 odd years only, we kind of been told that we are a very pacific, non-invasionist, and all that. But frankly, if you look at the Cholas or any period of history that our Indian civilization has been through, there has been violence all the time. There has been violence, has been met by equal amount of violence. It's been replied by militaries, the organization. If you read the Arthashastra that has been written, it's not just about military matters. It's an entire treatise on several things. Which Chanakya has written. It also talks about the military things. It came out as a result of the Greek invasion of this country, and we are led to believe that the Greeks defeated Porus in the battle, which is not true. It's if Greek had defeated us, why would they leave from here and go? Why would they just leave an ambassador in this place? And Seleucus Nicator was left behind here, and why would they leave and go? Because it's very clearly, when the Greeks saw that the Indian expanse, the Indus River, the elephants that they had for the first time, they encountered such huge, majestic elephants. They actually didn't want. They completely lost their morale, and they wanted to go back. And the Arthashastra is an amazing piece of literature which talks about economy. And this is something that I'm sad that our country, we don't really read those and study those and understand what is it that those people in those periods of time, those leaders, those people, that civilization went through. Now, when you talk about Cholas, it's an amazing thing. It was one of the most world's lesser talked about imperial powers, which ruled great parts even before all this British Empire or the great European colonization came in. The Cholas existed, they dominated, and they were a tiny community. They were a tiny kingdom. They had the Cheras in the south of Kerala, in Kerala, the parts that are in Kerala that had the port of Kollam. We had a very thriving trade that used to go on. And if you read Pliny's thing about the Roman Empire, he says one of his greatest losses or lament is that the amount of money that goes into the Indian peninsula, like to the ports here, because all the luxury that came in and everything. So that showed that we were seafarers, we did a lot of trade. And so the Cholas they had problems with the Chalukyas, they had the Pallavas, they had the Pandyas, they had the Cheras, and how did they tackle all those problems that existed? It is interesting that how they actually created alliances, and then they dislodged the eminent power, and went on to dominate. Even today, if you go to Sri Lanka, the sacking of Anuradhapura, I don't know whether you've been there, say in Sri Lanka. It is one of the greatest sackings that ever took place. The attack took place through Kollam, the port in Kollam, where this thing is there, and the Chola navy went in. And then you had this Ganga Konde Chole, he expanded the empire all the way through. And then, of course, when the Song dynasty was in China, the Cholas there was a problem about the trade that was taking place, and Cholas created an entire navy. We talk about the Normandy invasion, about a 600 strong navy, landing crafts and everything that went. But in Rajaraja Chola's time, 1,000-ship navy was prepared, each of which carrying infantrymen in it, and they landed off Sri Vijaya, established a new order, which even the Chinese couldn't dislodge thereafter. So it's something which is amazing, which we don't realize. I know we talk about, we were colonized for a long time, we were a slave country. This is all bunkum bullshit, sir, because if you look at it, when have we been actually colonized? Let's look at the history of the world, okay? Now, when the Roman Empire fell, you had the Dark Ages coming in Europe, and there's a large amount of this thing. But India continued to thrive. India had its period, it had its empire. The southern empires were never invaded, and we had this very, very interesting thing. Is when in 1453, when the Constantinople fell to the Muslim Ottomans, and the empire collapsed, and then they stopped all trade to India overland. That's when Pope told that, hello, guys, come here. European Christians, please get together and find a new trade route to India, because India, the entire thing, it is not just paper. There was a lot of trade, that wealth that came in, the cotton, the calicut, the linen, the silks. There are a large amount of things that came in from Kerala. And they said that need to find a route. And that's how Christopher Columbus went looking for India and found America instead. And that's why they call them Red Indians in 1492. And 1498, very cautiously, Vasco da Gama came, hugging the coast of Africa. He went around the Cape of Good Hope. Bartholomew Diaz had come earlier, about 6 years earlier, and there was somebody else who'd come and stayed here. But they knew that India, there was a route here, which the Arabs knew. But they came, and then they landed up in a port called Malindi in Kenya, today modern-day Kenya. And there they found a Malayali, a guide, a navigator, and he just got them straight. 1498, he landed and brought them to Cochin. Now, so this is a very, very Calicut. So this is a very thriving port. If you look at why would people want to come to India in those days, it was not just for the spices and peppers. So it was a very, very thriving metropolis. India was Kerala, the part that they came in was the New York of today, like it's the America or Europe of today, because it is a bustling center for trade, commerce, education, the mathematics, the literature, you had all these things, this astronomy. You go to temples in Tamil Nadu, you'll find those constellations drawn on, carved in the temples on the roof there. How would they be able to do it without a telescope? And exactly the constellations, as we know, the 27 stars, nakshatras that we have, is all carved there. Now, this is something that these guys were really good. People came here. Shushruata's treatise on surgery was translated. The Nibun, the algebra was translated. All these things were taken away. They're wrongly called Arabic numerals. These are all Indian numerals. They came here because it is a bustling center for education, for trade, for commerce. And when these guys, Vasco da Gama, came here, he looked around. There was a lot of prosperity, and he said they'd just come. They'd broken out from and colonization that had taken place in the 1400s, and they just broke free from there. And they hated the Muslims. And they said no trade should be carried out with the Moors. And the king of Calicut, Zamorin, said, "Nothing doing. I'm not interested in your trade, because what they brought was like what a beggar in Mecca wouldn't also give." That's what they said when they looked at the gifts the Portuguese Vasco da Gama had brought, and they Indians looked at it with scorn. And the issue is that they were never able to understand what drove it. India was a very peaceful country. They came in here. They brought a new, it's wrongly taught to us that 1526 is when, the history book written by all our famous historians or historians, they've written that 1526 in the first battle of Panipat is when you found gunpowder being used. It is not so. When the man at war, these ships that came from Portugal, they had these huge gunships. They would come and bombard our cities, and then they wanted alliances to be made, broken up, and and finally in 15 or 10, the combined fleets they defeated them in a battle, and they moved away to Goa. They dislodged the thing, and you had a very interesting. So there was never a period that any community got to dominate Indian subcontinent. Even they talk about the Mughal invasions as it's not so. When definitely there was a lucky shot that Akbar got in the second battle of Panipat, where Hemo Chandra got a shot in his eyes and he slumped over the howdah. And that's when the people thought he was defeated. And that's how the empire was established, the Mughal empire. But when Aurangzeb, he tried to impose a very, very unilateral kind of a hard decision, the people revolted. And then you had the Marathas actually ruling this part. The British came here and actually didn't take power from the Mughals. They took it from the Marathas, actually. The Marathas are the dominant power that was there. So it's interesting when you see that India has been a story of multiple campaigns, battles, and everything. And unfortunately for us, we've suddenly gone into this very Pacific mode. Even after independence, if you look at it, so this Anglo-Pakistani invasion of 1947-48, I call it an Anglo-Pakistani invasion because we were barely independent on 15th of August, 1947. And by October 24th, they were ready to invade our country. And how would that happen? A country, the Britishers ruled over the subcontinent for 200 years. They were from 1757, they were ruling over. You think they didn't know that an invasion of this scale was being planned? You think I don't know the reason why India allowed, Pakistan allowed it, because Pakistan had a reason. They were created by the British for a particular reason. But why did Indians allow British commanders in chief in our army? Why did we allow a viceroy to be there? It's interesting, somehow. And then the way we went on. But the fact is, India snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. We actually got Kashmir, and they've been actually very, very strategic, important things that we've learned, and we shouldn't let that martial spirit in our country, in our thinking, get denuded. And we shouldn't really. There are a lot of lessons in not just the Cholas; it's also the Vijayanagara Empire, Hakka Bukka's empire. There's a lot of lessons in in Shivaji, the Maratha Empire. There's a lot of lessons in everything, even the battles fought by Ashoka or Chandragupta Maurya, or there are many, many lessons that we need to learn to understand. Even if you study, the Palasi Raja's campaign against the Duke of Wellesley in Kerala, it's very interesting. Duke of Wellesley was the guy who went and defeated Napoleon in the famous battle at Waterloo. He got his training here. The Palasi Raja is the guy who actually taught him the importance of, keeping his forces in the maneuver warfare. What he learned and what he employed on the Napoleonic forces was something that he was trained here in the battle. It's not the battle in the they say in the school, the playgrounds of Eton. It's not so. It is here in Palasi Raja's Western Ghats that he actually learned his lessons, and it's interesting. So we must read out a lot of our history. We must feel proud about it, and we must be, even in today's history, we modern day Indians history, that we've actually done a lot of significant operations. It's only off late that we become a very timid thing. If you look at the intervention in Sri Lanka, or in Maldives, or in when we are willing to go to Mauritius and Seychelles, and we were capable of actually doing out of area operations and everything. But somehow now, when inimical forces are taking over in parts of Bangladesh or Nepal, or in Maldives, I don't know why we're sitting as passive bystanders and let events take over. I just, it doesn't go with the grain of an Indian mind. So I hope I didn't
Yeah.
talk too much, but
No, 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 no. Perfect. You very interesting. Right. I think you made some very important points. And let's go one by one. The first point which you made is that look, India has never been a passive bystander. India has always been imperialistic, if I may say, outward looking. Right. It we've had trade with the Arabs from a long time. We've also had trade with the East Asian countries, or right, for a long time, and we had trade as far as going back to the Chinese, right? And like we started with this issue of Cholas. The Cholas, like you said, they had to fight with the Cheras, the Pandavas, and the Ceylonese, and then they turned their attention to the north, the Rashtrakutas, Chalukyas, and all that. It was a multi-front kind of a situation. Or do you see any equations between the multi-front situation? Let me talk of Cholas first, and then we'll go back to the rest of the issues. Between the multi-front situation with the Cholas handled and what we are facing today, and yeah,
So we faced that kind of a situation in the 1971 war. Now let's go back to the 1971, and I think that's one of the most decisive actions that the Indian forces did very correctly. That we chose to delay our battle very strategically till such time that the monsoons were over, and the Indian forces had also trained, and we also were capable of. So when you look at it, that's a very interesting angle. In 1970 December, there was a huge cyclone that hit East Pakistan
Bangladesh. Yeah,
in Bangladesh, and that is earlier called the Cyclone Bola. And the way the Punjabi Muslims actually treated the East Pakistanis, I feel very bad that they actually gone around destroying those memory. They don't realize that the Westerners, who were the Punjabi elites, they thought that they were superior to the dark skinned Bengali speaking Muslims, and they never thought them as equal to them. And the thing is, they treated them very badly. Yahya Khan would say, "Oh, they're meant to die," and they never really. So that's when Mujibur Rahman came to power, and he rallied the entire thing. There was a strong march. There was an election, and when he won that election, he was placed under arrest, and people were rounded up, and Operation Searchlight started, and where they killed a large number of people. And now look at the things, the trauma that India faced. India was a very poor country those days. I don't know whether you recall. I remember, the Parthenium. I grew up in Bangalore, and children got asthmatic of the Parthenium weed, which was there. That came as part of the deal that the Americans used to send to us, and it's very interesting. Lyndon B. Johnson, an American president, who really, India was a democracy, very struggling democracy. It was working very hard to uplift millions of people out of poverty, and it was taking them. He would say that I would give a monthly waiver for your shipments. And when Indira Gandhi had gone to White House to meet the president, she was made to wait for half an hour, and she had to come because we were really suffering, in the sense we were short of food, and We're short of wheat and everything, and then when they kept them, waiting and treated us a very very big country, powerful country in the region, in the sense middle level power, and she decided I'm never ever going out with a begging bowl again, and that's how our green revolution came into effect. And so what I'm trying to say is the Americans never treated us well then, and I don't think they would treat anyone well, because the only thing that the Americans are interested is in their own national interests. They would drop them. It's something that they're very good at. If you read their history, they've abandoned their allies, whether it's the Shah of Iran or whether it's the Pakistan after the Taliban era. They've just abandoned them. So it's not something that you should put your eggs in all their baskets, because they're definitely not a reliable partner in many ways. And so when Yahya Khan was inflicting genocide in that region in East Pakistan, he was killing millions of people, created refugees over all people. Nobody sided with India, who was actually bearing the brunt. The Americans never said, "Hello, Mr. Yahya Khan, you got to stop this." They said, "No." There was George Bush, the father Bush, the elder senior. He was in the United Nations. You must read some of the interventions in the United Nations. We were made to be the perpetrators of this. It's not the Bola, the bad treatment. It is not the arrest of the democratic process. It is not anything else. It was that Indians are creating problem for Pakistan, where all the people were being killed there. It wasn't Yahya Khan's fault. It was the Indians' fault that that their people were starving and hungry. They were turned into refugees, and they never intervened when this genocide took place. And when December 3rd, when they attacked our airfields and the war was declared officially, we went in. The Americans moved the USS Enterprise in the Bay of Bengal. Now, if this is not multi-dimensional chess, what is it? Indian forces. There was this. I'm from Four Guards. General Sagat Singh was very particularly fond of Four Guards. General Himmat Singh was a commandant. Our commanding officers are called the commandant from the time it was raised, because of its. So he went around with him in a chopper, and he surveyed the whole Meghna River, and he realized that there are no defenses there. So he asked General Himmat, would you be ready to go across? And then, of course, Four Guards, being Four Guards, is a battalion that has never lost a battle in its entire 225 years of history. He said definitely, and then they were the first ones. Major Chandrakant and they all, those battalion went across the Meghna, and then of course there was the airdrop, and there was this people who landed the para. They just landed in Dhaka, and then of course Dhaka fell, and that's the reason why Bangladesh was created. And so we did play a multi-dimensional chess there, where when if you remember in 1970, Mr. Kissinger had gone, Henry Kissinger had gone to Nepal. Sorry, not Nepal, to Pakistan. And then he said he's got a bad stomach. And then that's when he flew to Peking those days, and he met the Chinese and told them that Indians act funny. Make sure that you open another front here. And luckily for us, the Chinese have never intervened in any of their, it's for some reason. And so we were actually playing a multi-dimensional chess, the kind that, where you have so many levels and so many opponents and so many strategies taking place at different levels. So Indians have done. So even now we have that kind of a thing. And I really, one thing I want to ask you is my father generation was born in an India that was defined from, Afghanistan, and Burma had not been liberated from India, or that act had not come. And, from that area till the very extremities of Burma, India was India, under the British. On 15th of August, suddenly, who were Indians till 14th of August, suddenly became Pakistanis, right? So there's nothing set in stone which says that, this is the boundary, and this has been endorsed to us by so and so. I don't think there's any reason that we should really hesitate in kind of altering the status quo. We should really take the battle into the enemy's territory, and we shouldn't be the one who are the recipients of on the receiving end of any strategy of the other side. We should be the strategists. We should decide. I don't know why in 1971, when we liberated a country at great cost, why wouldn't we negotiate for, if you look at it, Chittagong was never part of it was never a Muslim majority area, but Mountbatten decided to give it to the Pakistanis for whatever reason, and that's where the Seventh Fleet was going to land. And so why wouldn't we take back Chittagong hill tracts? Why wouldn't we take back something that is lacking in our There's a joke. There's this friend of mine, Sandeep Unitan, who says that like the four lions of the Ashoka pillar, we have our four departments looking in four different directions. I think until we all look like in one direction and we decide that this is our objective and we accomplish it, I don't think because honestly, we have all the four wings are capable. The armed forces are good. We have some of the finest brains in our country. We have some of the finest strategists in our country. We have everything, but it's just that matter of all of them sitting together and kind of planning it out. So it is, even in this situation, we do have an opportunity. We should alter the status quo. We shouldn't be reactionary. We should actually, we should. I really think, I don't want to prescribe anything, but the only way is to take the battle into the enemy and handle the smaller, easier threats first. Take them piece by piece, and then go on, so that, and show me one example in the world where people have intervened to change the situation. So please let me, when has anyone intervened in the interest of, hello, we need to preserve this? And if you're strong, it's the law of the big trucks. So the people respect you. It's people don't respect a pacific, docile, with their head down. Even in human relations, we only respect those people who has some kind of a. You agree, right, sir? It's not something that when you're pacific and docile and everything, you're walked all over. But if you stand firm and look that man in the eye, and whether you're a general or whether you're the boss, or you look him in the eye, that man he would respect you. It's never a person who puts his head down and do what you want to me and offer my other cheek. It's not going to work. It's never worked. Nobody. It might be said in the Bible that meek will inherit the earth, but I don't think meek has ever inherited the earth so far, at least.
Yeah, I think you put on a lot of things. One of the things you said, look, you need to be outward looking, you need to assert yourself. And my basic proposition is, if you need to assert yourself, you know, there has to be a lot of synergy between your military and your politics. And if you look at all the histories of our empires, great empires, whether it's Ashoka or the Chola Empire itself, or the Mughal empires also, there's a great deal of synergy between the military and the politics. Uh, you think it's lacking today, and you need to do something about it, so that it is only then that you can start really asserting and dominating your areas of interest.
See, in the ancient times, sir, generals, the military, the kings were also the commanders in chief of their armed forces. They personally
Oh, yeah,
led them.
yeah, yeah. So that means, yeah, you made a very important point. The kings were the commanders in chief. So the military authority and the political authority were one. And today
Absolutely.
there's a split. Yeah, please go ahead.
So there's something that that's something, the divide in our north block and south block should be really bridged. It's a very narrow road that divides both the sides, but I think the chasm is too big. I think we need to really sit down together, and it has to be a for many years, even insurgencies in our country, it is something that is outsourced to the army. If it's Kargil, it's an army's failure. So, excuse me, how is it an army's failure? Where's the intelligence? Where are the agencies that are responsible to tell you all this? How can it be the army's failure? 1962 was an army's failure. Hello, excuse me, wasn't it your IB guy who said to move ahead and that forward wicket policy? So that kind of a thing where you quickly pass the buck on to somebody else, you know, uh, it's something that needs course correction. We need to understand that there was an era in the early time when India had just become independent, and the region, the dictatorships were coming up and springing up like anything, whether it's in Pakistan or everywhere around the region. So there was an inherent fear of the military of probably taking over. But I think it has been proved beyond doubt that the Indian military is a very professional armed force. It doesn't really get involved in politics. I think you need to trust them to get them into your on the drawing board together. And even in the negotiations of 1971, after such a magnificent victory, they never negotiated asked us what is exactly that you want to retain. I don't understand why would we give away passes that we had captured in 65 war, part of the Tashkent agreement, or in 1971. Why would they give away? There were parts which are very clearly, we had refugees coming in from Chittagong. We had Chittagong was a predominantly a Buddhist area, and why wouldn't we ask them that, hello, excuse me, this part belongs to India, and this should be given back to us, and or we should negotiate for this. Why wouldn't they do that? I really don't understand. This bit about our country's inherent distrust of the armed forces for whatever reason, despite such a great history like other democracies like American or British or French. We've never shown any inkling to. I'm not part of it. The military has never shown any inkling to run the affairs of the country or take over. So I think it's very important to get them. The civil military divide should be bridged, and there should be more professional, like the Cargill Review Committee and the GOM report did say about integrating civilian staff and military staff in each other's decision-making processes. And so once you have professional military advice coming in, when you have those, I think it's very important that. So that is something
Yeah,
that has to be really worked upon, sir.
yeah. So, what you have said is that India lacks professional military advice despite having one of the most professional armies. Actually,
Absolutely.
that's probably the crux of the situation. Fine. There are two ways of looking at it. One is that, look, how do you change it? That's a larger question. At this point of time, I think it might be beyond our remit to talk of it. But within what we have, is there a way that we increase our military assertion, call it military diplomacy, military relations, and what have you, so that our issues in the neighborhood and our people at the countries surrounding us in the neighborhood understand who's the boss in town? Because, like you said, unless they know that you're the boss in town, they'll continue to misbehave the way they are. How do you think that can be done given the certain circumstances where we are in?
I don't know, Sen. the uh, Until the 80s, we were more capable about force projection. You know the case about
Yeah,
Seychelles in Mauritius. Operation uh, Laldora, which we had a naval ship landing in Seychelles to keep our, the and Mauritius, when the French speaking deputy tried to take over the country, and then Indians. It's these are operations are not known, and we've done that in when the SOS came out from Maldives, we rushed the 50 from Agra. We went there, landed there. Now, when you look at that, and even in 47, 48, or for that matter, in the various things that we've done earlier. So I
yeah, in
really don't know where.
Hyderabad and
So I don't know
look,
what's.
we've done a lot of intervention ops or consolidation ops in Hyderabad, in
Yes, yes.
Junagadh, Goa. A lot within the country, outside the country, in Sri Lanka, Maldives. Um, of course, Bangladesh is the biggest of the lot. So, taking these into consideration, of course, you can't go to war today with every country around you. But I think there's a lot otherwise we could do. I mean, what do you think we could do
I
then?
don't think there's any ban against a war. If the neighborhood gets too difficult and troublesome for us, I don't see any reason. Now, I don't understand why, we just have this report about Pakistan sending anti-tank, a lot of ammunition to Bangladesh, which is the enemy there that they're going to use. So if they're going to get belligerent, it's time to probably, teach a couple of arithmetic lessons to them, put them through tuitions for understanding, like it really can't, you know, uh, and I think a good, whether a great, the order is important for us to be maintained. So even those who are, large number of people in our own country who would advocate, they would call Sheikh Hasina a dictatorial kind of a thing. Excuse me, she was your country's friend. So why would she be? And she protected and looked after the interests of kept the secular credentials of that country. We really wouldn't want Afghanistan kind of a situation in our neighborhood. When we had East Pakistan here, we had a large number of militants, insurgent leaders from the northeast going into East Pakistan and then flying there to Pakistan, and then traveling to China, getting arms training, and then walking back. And so it's interesting for us to. A nation has to preserve its territorial integrity. It has to protect its people, its citizens. It's one of our fundamental, It's guaranteed under the Constitution that article, the right to self-defense. Article 51 calls upon everyone, every single citizen, to to be prepared to do what he can or she can to uphold the integrity of this country. So it's important for us to understand that there's nothing like we can't go to war, and I don't think we should
Yeah,
even think about it as a why do we have an army if we don't want to? Then we might as well become a a pacifist and say that okay, come walk over all of us, do what you want. I don't think that that's not something what the Cholas or the Mughals or the Sikh Empire or the Palas or the Vijayanagars or anyone would have done. Now look at Marthanda Verma. He had the British, the Dutch coming in 1756, the Battle of Colonial. The Dutch were really, very brutal and very strong. And Travancore was a tiny principality. That's from where I come. And you had these very aggressive Westerners. They altered, they defined a new level of violence. Whatever said and done, Asia and the rest of the world was a very peaceful country until the advent of the Europeans. Now, these people came up and they came up with a completely brutal level of attacks and destruction and forcible conversions, and they identifying the Muslims as non negotiable with them, and they brought kind of lot of difficult uh, so what did Marthanda Burma do when you had this? Look at how we evolved our tactics, sir. Now you know those famous boat races of Kerala. You've seen those long, slimy boats that are there with 100 oarsmen each. Why do you think they came up there? Now, this came up because you had these huge, mighty ships that are coming from Europe, and we had about 24 guns at each level, and they would bomb away. So there was no way you could escape the destruction that they came up with. So you created narrow, small little boats with 100 people coming in from all directions, and extremely high speeds. You've seen the boat race in Kerala. You must have been very, So they go at extremely, and they would just board the ship and really completely overwhelm them from all directions, and they would like climb and so they altered the status quo. They just gave a kick to the Dutch East Indies Company, and they went away from India forever. They went to Indonesia. Get the power bank here. So that's an interesting. So we must be ready to really alter the status quo. So it's not something that is we should just timidly accept as a given that
yeah,
oh
I can completely agree with you. I like the idea that we need to alter the status quo. Okay, let me pick your views on what's happening in Bangladesh. We are in a
oh,
situation there, and there's a lot of, you know, angst coming out of Bangladesh and all that. How do you think we should go about this situation in Bangladesh from a military point of view, seeking, given the fact that they're seeking ammunition from, Pakistan and things like that?
so it's one. If you look at Pakistan and look at their very foolish and vain ambitions all these years from 47 onwards, it's definitely not a very professional and I'm sorry to say you must respect your opponents and who wants to give a good fight to you, but I would love to see their capacity to actually hold on. And it's a matter of time. The opportunities would come, and when the opportunities come, I think you should be prepared to tackle it. And I think that is where your good luck comes, when your preparedness meets opportunities. And I think that when we prepare for what is going to, it's a possibility that we would have a very belligerent regime there, and we should be actually prepared, and we should be positioning our troops. When there are a lot of lessons even in World War II, when if you read how Hitler went around arming and invading people, and everyone closed their blind eye and no, it won't come to us. We wouldn't be interested. Even America, when they want to stay away from the war till the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on 6th of December 1941, that's when they entered. Even in World War II. So it isn't it. We don't have to war. We don't have to wait. It like in 1971 on 3rd December when Yahya Khan decided to bomb our airfields. We were already ready, right, sir? You were part of that generation that has actually seen all these active combat and in a sense, so they were ready for it, and it changed the history, the map of the world. And did anyone reset it? Was there a thing that, okay, hello, Microsoft software reset, pre 71? Even in 47, 48, Pakistan invaded India. And could we reset to the original territories of the Maharaja, which included Kailash Mansarovar, by the way, under the Minsar Treaty, under the Treaty of 1684? Those villagers in Kailash Mansarovar Aksai Chin belong to the Maharaja. Have we been able to reset it? No, nobody can. What you've done, like I told you, it's not something that has been handed over or revealed by a word of God. This shall be the boundary. It's not written anywhere. It was not written for Martanda Verma. It was not written for Akbars. It was not written for Harshavardhans. It was not written for Ashoka the Great. It was not written for any of those people. They decided, and those ones who decide that, hello, this is creating a lot of problem for us. We need to end this problem here. We need somebody like that who has a visionary leadership and the guts to do it. That the problem is, today we have become a very, very soft generation. We've not been through the hardships that our father's generation have been through, so we are really not capable of thinking in a manner that something that we got to work and prepare for. Everything comes so easily, and that's something that we need to watch out for. We need to prepare ourselves for the worst scenarios. We need to prepare ourselves for all contingencies, and we need to prepare to change. It's like a businessman. He sees an opportunity. He knows when he wants to enter there, and he alters it. People, they that is something that needs to be inculcated in our country, sir.
Yeah,
In
I
our
think that's a great point you're making. That you need to be ready to alter the situation. For that, you need strong leadership. You need to have the guts, and if you have to do any of this, you need to have a strong army. And which let me put it this way, and I'd like your views on it. If you have to defend the sovereignty and integrity of this country, I think our armed forces are good enough. But if you want to go out and be a power and say, okay, here I am, and this is what I can do to all of you, and occasionally knock on the other man's door, I don't think we're strong enough for that. Your views on that?
No, Caesar, we were strong enough for a large till the 80s. I don't know, somewhere down the thing and now again, when we do this cross border, we've altered the scenarios in 71 war. We've
Yeah,
changed against much great odds. And even now, earlier when we used to have a cross border raid or someone's head gets beheaded, we had the Aman Ki Asha and all that kind of tamasha that used to go around. I really don't think that you can it's like saying that if I'm nice to the snake is not going to bite me. Excuse me, you're going to be bitten. You got to have a bloody stick and be ready to breathe the bloody thing out of it. So it's like going into a mad dog saying, and then hello, hello, doggy, doggy. It's not going to come and spare you because you're saying hello. And there are a large number of people who believe that. So when we do a cross-border strike and we hit the head of the, where these problems are created, we do put caution into the thing. Otherwise, we were being a very doormat where, I see 814 hijack. I'm just watching that thing. I really wouldn't understand why would you really compromise and why would you actually go and hand over those prisoners. You should have a very clear policy, because see what has happened ultimately in saving those 100, and with all respect to them, is there are people dying all the time for a lot of reasons. More people die of heart attacks and and road accidents than actual battles. So when you accept this, that there are some things that are uncompromisable. How would you hand over a Masuda, sir, whom you captured with so much of difficulty, to because somebody is held, and then you're just encouraging them? I think we should have a policy of no negotiation with terrorists. You got to talk to somebody. You got to respect the law of the land. We need to do this. There's a reciprocity principle. You cannot have, we have to respect you because you are demanding it or something like that. There has to be a reciprocity. Your liberty doesn't, just because we are nice to you doesn't mean that you can walk all over, and something that I think that is very important for us uh, as a nation to inculcate and to communicate, that we are not some, pushovers or doormat that you can walk all over. We've done that in recent years, that we've actually done cross border strikes, and we've seen a reduction in those kind of things. And see, if you see, so what all that is happening now is a reaction to our taking the battle into the enemy's territory. And you actually can, if you study the patterns, it's something that has come out of this. And it's very interesting that the enemy is actually um, reacting to what we're doing instead of us reacting to what they do to us.
Yeah, I think you made some very interesting points. The necessity to take the battle into the other man's land or the enemy land onto your adversary land and reclaim what's yours. I'm not asking you to go and become like Rajarajendra Chola and set up empires outside. But the least I think we can do is reclaim ours. So fine, you given out a lot of ideas and a lot of new issues, and I see a lot of que- queries coming up. Shall we take a few questions with
Sure, sure.
your yeah? Okay, let me start with this. It says guts is the issue, political guts that is, and for one reason, post 1947, our guts politically are low. Is also because our retired military officers have stayed away from politics, so we get weak neta. Your views?
So guts is not confined to the military alone. I think even women whom we traditionally thought some of our greatest leaders have been women, and they're not associated with strong military. So I think it's about your mindset, how you actually prepare your. And I really want to tell you one thing, sir. One of the things that I feel, I grew up in a household where my father would talk about the glorious military history of the Tramaco, the Colonial Battle of and the Marthana Varma, the Tachuli Ordnance and Veera Pandey Katta Bowmans, and how we took on the British and everything. It is inculcated in us. It is like, my father would tell me about the Vellore Mutiny. He would tell about the martial, and we grew up in an environment where we celebrated, it's very interesting, sir. My father put me in a military school, and then in Bangalore, I would go to learn Bharatnatyam. Will you believe it? So, no, and then and everyone would when I went, when there was a school match, and then I said I have to go for my classes. So my name is Padma Naban, but my mother made it Padma. So they said, "Oh, your mother made you Padma because you are going to be a dancer." So so the thing is, men are capable of learning all these arts, which are there are these 64 kalas and vidyas that men should have, out of which dancing. If you read in the Mahabharata, in the Agyatwas, Arjuna was a dance teacher. In other words, he learned how to dance. So there was something in our ancient culture that prepared us from in all dimensions, so it gave us all the arts. So there's one military aspect where you learn archery, you learn the battle strategy, you learn how to make a chakravyu, you learn all those things, and leading men, and rearing horses. But there was so we need to create all-rounded personality. That education system that we had in our country, which created all-round personality, which could actually train your mind to think in multiple dimensions, that is gone today, sir. And that is the reason why we're producing people who are just, they know how to crack the civil services. They know how to crack, in our army also, we have some officers who know how to crack the code to become a general. There are some people who are, they just put their, so everywhere there's a formula that works, and they would be able to. So that is something that we need to alter. So we need to get back our traditional schooling system, put our children through Kalari schools, or when you had in Maharashtra, you had the Malkham, or you go to Punjab, you had those things where you train, and you also had those. So that kind of a personality, that's when our people, you join military, but you have a militant, not a militant, I mean a very strategic mindset in understanding what is required to be done at what time. And it is not just the military who are people with guts. You have some of the, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was not a military man, but he had great, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was not trained in the military, but, and if you look at it, some of the greatest, Lal Bahadur Shastri, would you ever imagine that he would have that vision to go and, create kind of the environment that we had? So while I agree that military people should join the military forces, but to think that that's going to be a solution, or we are all great strategists, it's not correct. I don't think I would be a, I may not be, I may not know how to operate certain things, but there are some skills that are. So I think it's about our education system, our cultural this thing, and our pride in the past, which is very, very important. How many of us know what happened to the Marathas? How did they come up? How many of us know what happened in Kerala? How did the Portuguese leave from there? How many of us know what happened in the Vijayanagar Empire, or even when how the British were defeated in a battle in this in the early days, and how the so these are things are not taught to us, and we need to get that pride into our. So you may have, one of the biggest things I think is not the theft of our Kohinoor or all the gold, which is definitely taken away from India, but it is the memory of our ancient past, memory of our ancient military histories that has been taken away. So today we don't value what we have in our country, in our collective military history, collective cultural history, collective we don't have it, and so we are very happy to let go, and we are being a very poor imitation of whatever we want to be. So if you want to be like the Americans, we are a very, very poor imitation. We are not. We are Indians, and I think we should retain the pride in our cultural history, which goes back to several. You tell me, sir, which other part of the world does a tribe like the you go to Andamans today? There are islands that you cannot enter. That's 10,000-year old civilization that is existing there. India is today like our people are going to the space and moon, and we have a island where no one. Show me another part of the world where you have such a enclosure for them. We are like so old, that ancient. Have you heard that guy, that English American fellow who went there and tried to convert them to Christianity, and he got shot and killed? So that's an interesting thing. So this country is an amazing country. We should all feel proud about our cultural history, our preservation, our multiculturalism, our ability to accept everyone. So when people tell you that, oh, you know, people are getting, look at what's happened in your neighborhood. Let's be very practical. Who came to India when they were persecuted? When the Jews, the temple was destroyed, they came to Kerala, to Cochin. The Jews of Cochin, they are about 2,000 years ago when King Solomon's mount was defeated. And then you had the Parsis, the Zarathustran, when they were when the Islamic Empire took over Persia, they came here, they took settle. Everyone has come here and taken refuge. So how can someone say that we are in danger? It's an interesting thing. So I think it's very important for us to, all Indians, to have, you when you read stories about our military leaders, about our women leaders, there are Rani Chennamma, Rani, there are some, like, these Jhansi, they were all. I think it's important for us to understand that we must collectively be proud of our ancient history, collectively be proud of our singular achievements today. In 1947, I think that pride should be there in us when we look at ourselves and create an identity as an Indian, which is distinctly Indian, which is very, very, we're proud about all that is there, good, right, bad, ugly. We are Indians, and I think we should be a great version of ourselves. And I think that's
Yep.
when our leaders are proud of that India, and not divisive, not dividing the country further and further. That is when, you have an India that is capable of looking anyone in their eye and telling them to walk the bloody talk. We can tell them to go take a hop. I think that is when. Now, when you want to look, you know, we have people who are dividing us, on and what kind of things that they come up with. There's no Miss India of I just can't believe that someone can say something like that. How many people from the other caste have been the prime ministers from when their party was in power? So it's ridiculous to have that kind of a statement coming from a leader of a political party, to even divide the country in those kind of lines. I think what we need to do is to unite the country and have a common identity where we all share our dream about a future that we want to have and live. Not go back into the past and say that, this. I think that is very important. And that is where leaders can only be created, political leaders who have a vision about, they have an idea about what this country needs to be 20 years from now. That is who can look into 2047 or 2100, where India is going to be. I think that is what we need. Not, I don't think any
You're
particular community or any
right.
particular caste has a right over military leadership or strategy or anything like that. Anyone can. Because British gave us this damn thing about martial races and all that thing because it is easier for them to govern us. I think that is something that we need to.
Yeah, I think this is a connected question. He says our history, as taught in the schools, is flawed. For instance, the Gujar Patiharas amongst 150 other tribes and clans were classified as criminal tribes by the British and remain so to date. Your views. He's talking of narrative and how narratives are formed to classify people who were otherwise, I mean, as per someone else's viewpoint. Your views.
Absolutely. So they divided the country, and it's like, when you read about the blind men of Hindustan, there's a poetry where they look at an elephant and they say the elephant is like a rope and elephant is like a, you read that Blind Men of Hindustan? General Sundarji had written that book also, The Blind Men of Hindustan. So the British, when they came here, they were confronted with this kind of they never knew the existence of, you know, this society which coexisted. So in Kerala, for example, when you go, so wars were fought constantly among states and, people and everyone. But what happened was the people who continued to do the businesses continued to do it. They were not affected. It was only the Nayars who actually provided the army, or the Erwas who actually provided armies to to fight them, and the others continued to do their businesses as usual. So you had, when this British came here, he was baffled by um, by the by the system that existed here, because they come from a very, where they have a queen and king and whatever, they had the lords and they had their peers and everything, and they just couldn't understand, decipher that mind. And for them, they were like the blind men of England who would come here, and they suddenly saw so much of opulence, wealth, a harmonious society. When Portuguese came here, they found Portuguese came here on the orders of the Pope. The Pope was created 300 years after Christ, while as the first apostle of Christ, called Saint Thomas, came here in AD 53, and Christians have been here from 2000 years. So when Portuguese came here and he saw this Christianity flourishing here, he was suddenly shocked, And then they said that they follow Jesus and the learnings, it was something. And then there was a battle. It's called the the Kurishi agitation, Kunan Kurishi agitation against the Portuguese who wanted to impose them. So they couldn't understand how can Christianity. Similarly, Prophet Muhammad's companions, even before Islam took roots there. It came here. There's Malik Dinar who came here, and so he settled here. So now, for a Westerner or for a person here, he couldn't understand the kind of Islam or Christianity being practiced here. They couldn't understand. So how would they be able to? So when they see this, they say, "Oh, we need to interpret it as per our rules." So they interpreted whatever existed in their minds, as criminal groups, non-martial, martial, long nose and sharp eyes. That's what the Hutu or Tutsis fight in Rwanda is about, the Belgian classification of people into, various tribes. And, the Rwandan crisis that happens. It's interesting how Belgian Congo and everyone, they came and divided the world in very, very odd ways. And the sad part is we've accepted it for so many years. The British drew up the Sykes-Picot, carved up the whole of West Asia post World War One, Syria, the protectorates and everything. What we see today, Iraq, or, all these are areas that were drawn by some couple of mad Europeans over a drink that they've drawn the thing, just like the way the Radcliffe has drawn a map here. And it's not something that we need to accept it. The Durand Line, I don't know why the Afghans are accepting the Durand Line 100 years after the 120 years now, 1893 it was made. It was meant to keep away the warring Pathans and the Pashtuns away from the British areas. The Durand Line, we had the fortresses in Razmak, Fort Alexandra, where they had those outposts to control them. My unit was deployed in Razmak on 1947. And so it's interesting to read the history, how the British. So why are we accepting those lines anymore? Why are we accepting those things? We need to get a new order. And, I'm glad that we've gone away from the old Indian Penal Code, and we have the Bharatiya Nyaya Samiti, and we have the, new order. And we need to really look at our education system. We need to look at our kind of a thing that we understand. And there's a lot of things that we need to rekindle in ourselves.
Take one more question. It seems Pavlovian dogs and brainwashing was demonstrated in real life by Indians. Doctored Indian history, starting from Sikandar Pauras, was presented as proud and unfortunate losers. Why I put this is this last representation of Indian as proud and unfortunate losers. I think there's a time it's come for us to change this thinking. Your views?
So, for a long, when we in 1947 we were an impoverished country, so we must also know one thing, that whatever the history, World War II had completely emancipated the Europeans, the British rulers here. They were standing in lines. Even the Queen would get a few crumbs of bread. There was rationing that took place because the German forces had actually leveled up that country. They were destroyed, and it was a matter of time that we were anyway going to be independent. If you read Wavell's noting after the 1946 Sepoy mutiny, the naval mutiny, he said that we can't hold on to India. And the sad part is that narrative, forget about Sporus, forget about Sikandar, forget about all that. Even this narrative has been lost to us. Do you know it? That, Wavell's noting said that in case this mutiny spreads beyond, even that INA trials of those three people, the Sikh gentleman, Shahnawaz, and uh, there were three of them. There was a Sikh, there was a Hindu Segal, and the trials evoked so much of passion in our country. In the INA trial that was taking place, and then the 1840. Where's that history, sir? Why are we going back to Porus? Why are we subduing that kind of history? Why are we subduing the fact that India has accomplished, even in our own, like when you look at, I would like to talk to you about separately about this. Look at the accomplishments of India since 1947, sir. Look at where we were. Like I told you, when 1970, when Lyndon B. Johnson, an American Democratic president, would make us wait in line, and they sent Parthenium wheat to India, and we all. I remember as a child, I would get asthma in Bangalore because of the Parthenium wheat. So we were. That is called the PL 480. And where we are today we are the bread basket for the rest of the world. We had went through so many famines, and we are today. The world looked down upon us as coolies. Today uh, we are the ones who are, whether it's our pharma industry, that Corona, the kind of activity that we did to create those vaccines. Isn't it interesting, sir, the way Indian pharma industry has taken on it's an interesting story. I wish I can talk to you about our
Yeah, we'll
own.
talk about it one of these days, right?
It's very
And
interesting because it's interesting. And where is that story coming in the mainstream narratives? Where is it? Why are we
exactly.
hiding our own accomplishments? A company like Tata, which is a tiny company, has taken on vehicle, like it couldn't even manufacture its own car. Look at the Tatas, they made an Indica, which didn't do very well. Today, they've acquired Jaguar and Land Rover and the Starbus, and today the world's best cars are manufactured by Tata. Or for that matter, Tetley Tea. Tata was a tiny company, they acquired Tetley, and so Indians are, whereas these stories don't come up, we only know about caste system, and we know about some people getting lynched, which happened. And I worked in Red Cross, and there was this Australian guy, and he was very rude and very racist. They looked down upon Indians, I remember. So I'm from the army, and we don't pay for our ladies when we go, our mess bills for ladies and children. We're not I remember we went, and they would actually, the Europeans calculate divided by 6 or 10, and they're very, very money conscious. So I just took out this thing. I said, this is my, on behalf of the ladies also India. So the guy made a very racist statement. Oh, you Indians are, you definitely pay for the ladies, but you rape them also. That was, which is very ridiculous. I said, it's a very stupid thing to say, to kind of talk about this and this kind of a thing anywhere, whether it's in Indian or anywhere. So they say, no, you guys are all of that, you guys are all that, all the time, you want to get into Australia and that kind of that's the time a lot of racist attacks were taking place in this place. And so I told him, I don't think so. You're right, Mr. So-and-so. In India, 25,000 trains travel. One Australia travels in our train. The population of Australia was around 25 million those days. And if you look at the number of trains that are going around in our country alone, sir, it's like an Australia on the wheels. So it's something that we got to be proud of. Forget about all the tourist part. Even now, our accomplishments are significant. We have done exceedingly well from 1947. Today, we are racing to be in the top 5 economies of the world. We have turned poverty on its face. We have turned hunger. I have stood in line to get 5 kgs of atta on a ration card for our family. Today, does my children even know what it means to, we've gone through that time, isn't it? So when kerosene was limited, and we would everything was rationed, and today look at where we are. So it's an amazing. I think we need to as Indians feel proud about our accomplishments and get united and have a united idea about what India is and what's a dream that we all share about our future. I think that's more important than looking at us as else as so that's something that is very important. So
Yeah. This is a nice comment you got and a compliment also. Pillay, sir, your fiery firebrand answer has further cemented my belief that our retired military officers should start considering joining our political system. I am seeing a leader speaking tonight. That's a great compliment to you. And,
I
you
don't think
might.
we are fit for the political system that is running our country right now, sir. I don't think the kind of the kind of debates you see there, and the kind of divisiveness that we are never, we are leading people. When we go into our missions, I think we are all united. The reason that we join the armed forces is because we all love our country, and we're not there to kill anyone. We're here to defend what we all love, sir. And I think that
Yeah,
every Indian should start thinking about what we all love about this country and start defending, and protecting and creating a better future for all of us.
yeah. The last question. He says, great discussion. One thing the Cholas were great at, their own shipbuilding. The technology was home developed and the best at the time. Why is our military now not able to shake the import addiction?
Sir, I worked on a project called the Project Beta, which was a handled PDA in 2003. General Shami Mehta was the thing, and SA2RM Dr. Atre was the chairman. And it was something that was born. There was Colonel KPM Das. When you go into a patrol, when I got shot, I didn't even know where my men was. I didn't know her. And I remember seeing in 2003 those Humvees, and remember Iraqis, and they would show those Humvees connected on digital PDAs and everything. You won't believe it. So we actually delivered it's called the SATI, Situational Awareness Tactical Handled Interface. It was along with the ACCCS. We were in DG Information System. We delivered a handled PDA based on a computer, and it was based on it had a GIS, GPS, a radio, and it had overlays, and it had preset images. It's come today in our mobile technology. In 2003, we delivered that. So if you want, you can just check it. It's there. You Google Project Beta Sati, and it was under General Shami Mehta, and they killed it. And you won't believe it, sir. 1960s, we had the German engineers who created some of the finest aircrafts in the world, the fighter aircraft. There was this guy who came to India, and he manufactured an aircraft. All that it needed was a powerful engine, which needed about a few lakhs more. It was costing about 12 lakhs those days in 1960, and the government of India didn't sanction it. It's like having a Mercedes Benz with a 800cc engine. He had so about the Marut aircraft, no, sir? And so there's something about our system, like I told you, like those four lions looking in different directions. Our ability to harness and have a common vision about getting our academia, about our the private-public partnership, our industry on one page, and getting them to work together. It's something that is missing, and that will only come. We had Mr. Parikar trying it, and we had. I think it's very important to have that political. We have this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, and so now in shipbuilding, I must acknowledge that Indians are like in Navy. You have to give the credit to the Navy for developing the shipbuilding, ship design bureau, and everything. And there are certain developments that we've done. Even now, in Kerala, we had some of the finest shipbuilders with the British destroyed. We had the finest ships, and the teak, Malabar teak was famous, and they would take the American ship on which the Declaration of Independence was signed was Malabar teak ship made here, sir. Do you know that? The ship went from here. So it's not that but they decimated our capacities, and we are coming up of age now. This Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we are actually focusing inwards to deliver, and I think it's very important. So those cases of Marut and my own experience in Project Beta, the Sati, and everything that shows that how we had
Yeah.
an addiction, and I'm glad that we would.
No, look, let me clarify this to Upuli. Uh, I've been in the army for 40 years plus, and I'm still dealing with the army, and I'm still involved in this Atmanirbharta trip. And anyone in the army will tell you. I mean, I don't have to tell anything about myself. Let me assure everyone who's watching, we don't have a addiction for import. We're not interested. We are more than happy to use what Indians make. There have been a couple of problems with this. Let me put it in the right context. First is that we have not made enough. We have not invested in how to make enough. That's the first problem. Why? And this is a legacy you know, uh, we've inherited from the British. When the Britishers left India, they left a whole lot of manufacturing ability for sustainment. We had a whole lot of ordnance factories who could make ammunition, who could make weapons and all that. Sustainment we could. We had a fine arm which could fight. We had a good set of politicians who could set up the nation. But we didn't have people who could invent or carry out research to come up with new ideas and new weapons. And for whatever reason, good, bad, or ugly, we have not been able to overcome that. And we have not been able to overcome that. And like what Colonel Pillay said, and many times in our history, whenever someone has come up with a great idea, for whatever reason, we have not been able to, you know, adopt that. But having said that, there's been our failures. There's been no failures. Having said that, throughout our history, right from 47, like he said earlier, we got independent in August. By June, by August, and by October, we were fighting. Throughout our history, we've been constantly been forced to defend ourselves. Right? If that be so, you don't have time to shake off your import addiction, if I may say so, because you have to fight. If you don't have, and say, look, I'm going to now invent, and just wait till then, till the time I have the right weapon, the other guy will roll over you. And we have not got out of this predicament. These two have been our problems. And then, of course, our polity, the way it is developed, for whatever good, bad, or ugly, has developed in an odd way. It's actually probably the most mishapen way it has grown, and that has not changed so far. Or polity, what, if you notice what Colonel Pillay said throughout in the evening, conquest, greatness, expeditionary ability, imperialism, doing what you want to do comes when there is this consonance between the military and the political system, right? And that in the olden days was invested in the king because he was the politician and he was the chief army man, right? Today it is not so, it is separated. So in this era of separation, the way our army has grown, the nation has grown, it has kept the armed forces behind. So that gap has not been, bridged. It is only off late that we are trying to bridge this gap. And here, unfortunately, history is repeating itself, even with the current government, which is quite nationalistic, right? I mean, if you just have to look, unless you have money, you don't get anything from the military. Okay, and that money, which constantly over the past 10-year period, if you see our defense budgets have been going down. There is no, while a lot of talk is there that the military is being brought into the decision making system XYZ, it has not happened. It has not happened. Let me assure you, it has not happened despite all our successes. And I have scripted a lot of successes. I'm proud of those successes. But if you say, are you proud as an Indian that you scripted that much and you couldn't do more? I am not proud. That's an honest admission I can make to you. We don't have a military addiction or an import addiction. The armed forces don't have. This is a wrong thinking.
I'd
Uh,
like to add here.
yeah, please go ahead.
So, it's also too much of regulation, like when military production and military design. So, in 1947-48, when we inherited, Tatas used to manufacture in, if the African war, when the Hitler destroyed all the manufacturing, the iron ore used to be taken from India, it used to go to England, and they used to convert it into whatever they wanted, and it used to come back in finished product, whether it's cotton or anything, it used to come back. So Hitler had gone and demolished all their capacities, and so when Jamshedji Tata had set up the steel mills here, he created a capacity for them to manufacture rail lines, and there was a vehicle called the Tata Mobile, which was used in World War II in Africa. So we were manufacturing that. HAL was Walchand, the guy used to actually do aircraft here. So we had an amazing, interesting capacity to do. Ordnance factories were doing Ishapur, the weapon man. What the government did, and whatever reason Mr. Nehru and his government decided, was to control the defense production for whatever reason. It killed the initiative. Now, when you look at the IT industry's progress, like in 80s and 90s, when we were It was a sector that was not even. It was not even. It was under the Telegraph Act. So if you remember, this Indian industry, Indian private Indian, the TCS and the Infosys and the thing, they found and they flourished and they did very well. It's an Indian enterprise, the businessmen who've done it. I think the key to all our ills is when remember sir, when in our childhood we would only get an ambassador or a premier president. The latest version of the ambassador was two bumpers without the middle portion and one seat with a color, one dashboard. That was Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV. But when our industry was liberalized in 1991, and when our industry, you see the way today Indian automobile industry is. So we market forces have to be allowed to take charge of the whole thing. We won't need a DRDO to come and tell us what technology is there. And even this DRDO sir reports to whom? The scientific advisor reports to the army. Doesn't report to the service chiefs who are the users of the equipment. They go, I think there is something very flawed in this process. It's designed to fail. I think until we allow private industry and enterprise to get into this business, and that's how you see globally everywhere, whether it's a Lockheed Martin or a Grumman Thermo or anywhere in the world, you've seen the whole world. So, and you scouted the thing and you understand, isn't it? So the private enterprise that actually, would deliver. The British did away with the government-run ordnances, factories, and defense industries, and so it's interesting that we should allow this private because you can't fight with second-rate weapons and win a first-rate war. There's no runners-up
Yeah,
in war. So you
there's no
can't,
runners.
neither can you win on a borrowed weapon system because the Americans switched off the GPSs, the Exocet missile, which is given to them, Argentina, Falklands War, the French, whatever said and done, the white man is a white man's friend. And Argentina was fighting for that. Remember the first ship that fell, and then the Argentinians couldn't sink anymore because even though they had the Exocet. So we must remember that we can't win a war on borrowed weapons. We cannot win a war on, and neither can you win a war on second-rate weapons. So it's you need the best because there's the final, So I think it's very important for us to allow our private enterprise to enter, which is doing now, which a lot of people are delivering.
Yeah,
Solar. If you remember, I remember I was in the national when we decided to allow there's private industry to enter into the explosives manufacturing, and they're doing very well. So if you see their stocks and you see they're
I know
delivering.
that. I know
Even
that. Yeah.
the boots that are there, we used to get. What did we get, sir? We got those things at 2,250. The boot didn't even last one petrol in the Northeast. So one monsoon and your boots opened up. Today, our boots go to Israel, sir. Do you know that? Our manufacturing gear, Indian private enterprise manufactured equipment goes there. Why? That is something that is the capacity of that Indian.
Yeah,
That's the reason why
I
1498 this guy came looking for us. The
yeah, I
same
agree
Indian.
with you completely. I agree with you completely. Things are changing, and we need to be patient enough for them to change. Change doesn't happen overnight; it takes time. Right. I think we are actually well past time, and we had a great session with Colonel Pillay. And the last compliment from him for him is Shankar sir, please invite Pillay sir again on Gunner Shot. We will, and Pillay will. I'll personally look forward. Choose your topic, and we'll get back next and have a I wouldn't say a better discussion, an equally nice discussion. Right.
Thank
With
you, sir.
this,
Thank you for
thanks a
inviting me.
lot to everyone who watched this program. And thanks a lot to Colonel Pillay who made it possible to come and give out his talks. Colonel Pillay has come to us like a breath of fresh air. Right. And tomorrow, I would like to tell everyone tomorrow is Sunday. So I'm going to do something at 4 o'clock in the evening because evening I have a program. And tomorrow I'm going to have an open house where you can all ask all your questions. But my subject tomorrow is going to be something different. And the subject is called Xi the lame duck. Xi Jinping is today the lame duck. And I'm going to explain how. And that I'll follow up with the open house. Okay, till then, tomorrow evening, 4 o'clock. See you. Good night and have a great day. Jai Hind. And
Thank you.
Jai Hind to you, Pillay, also.
Jai Hind, sir. Thank you, sir.